Hello, and thank you for tuning in. It's a pleasure to have with us today Dr. Jeannette Wong-Powell of UIW's Rosenberg School of Optometry to help us kick off the Lewis Center of the Americas interview series. Our interviews will focus on guests who through their work are strengthening and expanding international relations in the Americas. Jeannette Wong-Powell arrived in the United States from Mexico at the age of 18 with little more than a passport in hand, unable to speak a word of English, to follow a dream she'd had since she was a child. She turned that dream into reality, becoming a practicing optometrist and then an esteemed professor here in San Antonio at the University of the Incarnate Word. Thank you, Dr. Wong-Powell, for taking the time to visit with us and for helping us kick off the interview series. I'm so pleased to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hoyle, for having me. I am honored to be here and happy to share my story.
It's a great story indeed, Jeannette. The journey that brought you from Mexico to the U.S. and ultimately to UIW is fascinating and illustrates how opportunities open up when we look beyond our national borders. Tell us a little bit more about that life journey and how you ended up at UIW from Mexico City.
You know, it's a long story, but my grandmother was an American tourist traveling in Mexico City, and she met my grandfather there. And so that's where the Mexico City connection was made. And later on, their son, my father, would also find love in Mexico City. So that was, my mom. And unfortunately, my father passed away when I was 2 years old. So my mother took me to Mexico to raise me with her family. And obviously, this was very tragic in my life, but also at the same time, I think that having been raised there was one of God's greatest gifts, because it would eventually lead to me being fully bilingual, fully bicultural, and just kind of open the possibilities and shape me as a person.
It's inspiring, Jeannette. Your journey was clearly difficult and required great perseverance, but you reap rewards as a result of rising to the many challenges. One of these rewards being that you acquired a deep knowledge of more than one culture and more than one language. This knowledge has enriched your life, of course, and likely also helped you in your professional path. Has indeed your bilingualism and biculturalism helped you professionally?
And your personal life is everything, right? Because it is said that no suffering is wasted. And so that is going to lead to character and perseverance in everything that you do. So obviously, growing up in Mexico with a single mom was maybe not the easiest thing. You learn to appreciate everything. You learn to value everything. So it's said that talent is universal, but opportunity is not universal. And that is 100% true. So the moment that I was presented with opportunity, I knew what I had to do. And that opportunity came when I turned 18 years old, and the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City said, yep, your paperwork checks out. Here's a U.S. passport. And I had this dream. I wanted to be an eye doctor, and I knew that the best eye doctors came from the United States because they had the training to become an optometrist is much more systematic, and it's longer, and your scope of practice is greater. So I just made a decision that I was going to follow my dream, and I showed up at my grandmother's doorstep. I said, I don't have a lot. I want to go to school. I want to be an eye doctor. And grandma was like, I don't have a lot either, but we'll give you room and board, and we'll show you the way to the community college, and we'll help you apply for a part-time job. And I was like, deal. And so that was how it all started and how I just worked my way every day.
Jeannette, the crossing of borders clearly helped you achieve professional success. And now, as a professor and optometrist, you are continuing to cross borders to help others advance UIW's mission. Tell us how your cross-border work began and developed at UIW, and how it led to your recent international assignment in Colombia and your collaboration with Colombia's Fundación Ariandina.
I was obviously marked by poverty, right, during my upbringing. And that really creates a lot of empathy in a person. So I was recruited to go to Mexico to do outreach. There was a team of surgeons that needed a bilingual person that could run the clinics and that could find candidates that would benefit from sight-saving surgeries. So I started collaborating with them. And once they had a person that the patients could trust, because it was like, hello, I'm one of them. You know, when I explain to them what they need, what's going to happen, they have trust in me. When I try to collaborate with the local health department, I speak their language. I know the system. And then moreover, I have this UIW name badge on my chest, you know, that generates additional trust. So I had this great platform. And then I also had the intention, you know, to put it to work. So it got even better. So I could see patients at UIW, make a difference. And then on top of that, they allowed me to bring students to join on my volunteer work that I had been doing. And so then it became not just me trying to give back, trying to pay back for all the blessings I had received, but now I was bringing students and residents along and sort of teaching them the real meaning of the field that they had picked. Like, here it is. Now do you see? Now you see where you fit in this whole scheme, in this whole continuum of interventions. Now you see the impact that your education has on other people. And then whenever I was able to bring a student that was also like second generation, that spoke Spanish, bring them on mission, it was really an emotional thing for them. And for me too, because it was almost like, here comes a child of your struggle, right? Because that's their culture, that's their ancestry, perhaps. You know, some of them, their grandparents came from Mexico, and UIW took them, made them doctors, and now we're giving them back to you. Amazing. And so that was amazing, you know, so that sealed my fate. And then eventually we did enough work internationally with mission trips, with outreach, that we got fairly good at it. You know, I really was giving the tools at UIW. I was giving the platform. You know, we have this service learning showcase that we do every year. So that sort of gave me some ideas as to how to give it an academic twist, you know, an academic perspective when it comes to eye care outreach and mission work and so on. And so eventually it allowed me to build a portfolio that was good enough so that institutions abroad were interested in saying, hey, so we are interested in seeing how we can improve our outreach programs and whether we can actually measure the impact that it has on populations or the impact that it has on our students. And do you know anybody that can do that? And they were, you know, referred to me, and I was very lucky to have been given that opportunity. So that's how the Colombia connection occurred. It was all thanks to the work that has been done at UIW for the last 10 years, you know, by having this platform. And it was amazing. It was magical. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed working there with my counterparts on common goals. We're both very passionate about what we do and very passionate about the future of optometry. And that's something that is no small thing. You know, when people from different countries say, this is something that we think is going to be good for our students, for the profession, really for humanity, that was really a gift that I'm going to be very grateful for forever.
Congratulations, Jeannette, on the wonderful work and the impact it's had. That impact has benefited many, including the UIW students you work with. Could you tell us a bit more about the students who have crossed borders with you to help deliver service? How are those students impacted by the cross-border work that you do with their help?
You know, one of my favorite things to be part of here at UIW is what we call service learning, because you are learning and honing your skills at the same time that you're providing a service to those who need it most. And in optometry, the work that we do in Mexico is eye-opening to them. So not only are they going to go and see dozens of patients in one day with advanced conditions and really get good at diagnosing and treating and building that confidence in their skills, but they also come back transformed because they finally understand. They understand where they fit in. There's this continuum of interventions, right, to prevent somebody from being blind or to cure them from blindness. And so when they go there and they're able to just focus on the bottom line, which is doing your very best to help this person with the tools that you have available here, whether they're optimal or non-optimal, it is eye-opening to them. I think they realize for the first time that they're not just doing this in order to, have, a good paycheck eventually, or to have a title attached to their name, but they're doing this to truly make the world a better place, to truly have an impact on other people's lives. So they come back transformed. It's like spiritually, it does something to them. Professionally, it does something to them. And a lot of misconceptions that they have go away. So if they were assuming that people over there are less happy than we are here, just because maybe financially we're better off, they realize when they see that 90-year-old person who is blind and is being led by the 10-year-old great-granddaughter, that there's a lot of things to treasure in life, right? So they may not have the money to pay for the surgery that they need, but look what they have. They have the devotion of their family. And so that really goes a long way to that personal growth that we aim to embed in our students, along with the skill set, so that they can come back, be better doctors, apply that knowledge that they gain in the field, but also be personally, individually transformed and see themselves in a different light.
Jeannette, we know Colombia and Mexico share so much in terms of history and culture, but are also very different. As a woman of Mexican heritage traveling to Colombia, how would you describe your cross-border journey and cultural encounter in this case? Obviously not the same as crossing from Mexico to the US. What was it like to be a Mexicana in Colombia?
So it's interesting because, in Latin America, we just kind of make the best of the situation, and we're pretty good at improvising, to be honest with you. That's just kind of like a superpower that Latins have.
Latino superpower, improvising.
It is. It's like, I may not have everything I need. This may not be ideal, but I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to make it work. And so some of the things was like during the planning of the project where we would have to improvise, right?
Yeah.
And, for them, it was like, rather than being apologetic, it was like, oh, she'll be fine, like she'll be flexible, whatever. So I arrive in Colombia on a Sunday evening and we're having dinner. And I'm like, so I'm doing continuing education for you guys on Thursday, right? And they're like, no, tomorrow at 7 a.m. I'm like, okay, that works, we'll do that. So there was just kind of like this understanding that we were there to do something great. Mm-hmm. And that we were going to have to be flexible in order to have the, greatest number of people possibly be impacted by the work that we were doing. So in that sense, we were of one mind. It was also, not a lot of people know this, but, optometry as we practice it in the US is not necessarily done elsewhere. What we have here is really unique. And that's what makes me so passionate about optometry. Is that even in first world countries, they sometimes don't have a primary care provider for the eyes. So a lot of the blindness that is preventable doesn't get addressed. And this happens in first world countries because they don't have optometry the way that we practice it here. And Colombia is one of the few countries in the world that does have a systematic way to train, and that also has very high standards for optometrists and has the expectation for us to actually be in the front lines of preventing blindness. So right away, we have a lot in common. We have this passion, and then we can, the language, share the language, and we had some common goals. So from there, and just the grit, the being adaptable, I feel like the faculty over there are my sisters now.
That's great, man. That's what a wonderful experience. And some of your comments just made me realize. I've always believed in international educational exchange, right? The great power that comes, the great rewards that are available to us if we can share knowledge, because sometimes and practices that are different in one nation and another. Now, Colombia and the U.S. Have these similarities in the way that optometry is practiced. But this is really interesting what you tell me about that. In other countries, the kind of the discipline of optometry and just the general popular practice of going to the eye doctor to to be tested for preventable diseases is not as common. It's not a common thing like here in the U.S. So super glad that you were able to share some of our expertise, UIW expertise, United States expertise with other countries, and then of course having the exchange with Colombia. That really interesting to know that they're also kind of on this forefront of the practice of optometry. Jeannette, here in the United States, we are very fortunate financially compared to most countries in the world, where we have in the higher ed system some great financial resources that results in terrific facilities, terrific equipment that benefits our faculty and our students. And UIW and the School of Optometry is really a good example of that. Tell me a little bit about the equipment, the facilities at Fundación Ariandina, and are they up to par to say the facilities that we have here, or are they challenged in that regard?
It's very interesting because whenever we do tours for prospective students, whenever they come look at the school and we show them around, I tell them any optometry school in the nation is going to have awesome facilities, because that is really driven by finances, and we have great resources here. What you need to be paying attention to is the stories. What you need to be paying attention to is the philosophy of teaching, who's going to mentor you, because that's what's going to shape you into what kind of doctor you end up being. Now, in Colombia, they have plenty of talent. I mean, when I was working with those students, lecturing to those students, they could handle the advanced topics that I was, tossing at them, and they were very engaged. But the challenge that they had is that maybe they don't each own the equipment necessary for advanced diagnosis of ocular diseases. So what we did, and we talked about this, and this is how we planned it, is we actually were able to bring some of the Rosenberg School of Optometry portable equipment to Colombia and take their students on the field. And we basically gave them a protocol so that they could focus on learning how to use that equipment to enhance their skills and to realize the potential that they have in terms of looking inside the eye, measuring eye pressure. And we had a survey. So we surveyed them like before, as far as what they were apprehensive about, what were their expectations, what things were they really unsure and shy about that maybe they didn't know how to do. Some of them felt like even just touching the equipment was like, oh, I don't want to break it. I don't want to take a risk with it. And then when we took them on the field and we showed them how to use the equipment, how to be comfortable with it, and how to even put their base knowledge to work by actually giving them different tools, different ways of looking at the eye. It was really amazing to see how excited they were, So it was really a blessing to be able to share resources with them, but at the same time, to also see just how much talent and how much motivation there is on their end, and that we can really do some awesome things working together if we know, okay, what do you need? How can we help? And it goes both ways, because we can both learn from each other. And their faculty are incredibly talented and incredibly hardworking. And so even though, we were sharing stories, like teaching stories and so on, and it was amazing to see how much, how many gripes we have in common as instructors, and also, the beauty of the passion that people have for teaching, both here in the United States and in Colombia, and then the passion that we both have for optometry. So one of the things that we said during our joint lectures there and our joint interviews is, how about this? United States and Colombia, who are two of the few countries in the world that have a high level of optometric training, leading the way for the rest of the world. And so we all kind of stayed with that.
Again, your story is so interesting. From Mexico, came here and learned English, but also first generation, right? First generation college. I think that's really significant. I'd be curious to know, what advice would you have for young Hispanic women, particularly those who are first generation college students, who are perhaps looking to explore careers in the sciences, or perhaps even considering a career path that takes them across a national border, something different? What advice would you have for them after everything that you've been through and the success that you've had?
I think the biggest challenge that I had when you're first generation is you don't really have mentors. Your mom or dad, if they're not professionals themselves, they're not necessarily going to be telling you what's the best strategy to get into the professional school of your choice. They may not necessarily be able to even help you with your homework early on. So that can be a challenge. But again, one of the reasons that I am in teaching is my way to give back, because I had wonderful teachers, right? So find those mentors, find those people that believe in you, find those people that have that generosity to lead you, to give you ideas, because the biggest challenge you're going to have is maybe not believing in yourself enough. And unfortunately, those of us that are first generation, if you have an accent, you see that as a disadvantage. You perceive yourself as being as a disadvantage. And if you don't have somebody that can give you the perspective and say, no, you don't know what you're saying. The fact that you have an accent means that you speak more than one language. And it means that you can be instrumental in certain projects that require that skill set. So that's the biggest thing, is just surround yourself with people that are willing to mentor you. And don't be afraid. Realize the things that you perceive as a weakness are actually superpowers that you need to embrace and be very proud of, right? I don't know that I was necessarily proud when I first arrived in the United States of the fact that I couldn't speak English very well, hardly at all. But there will come a time when you realize what a badge of honor it is to have overcome those barriers, and that is going to make you extremely well qualified to lead others, and that is going to make you instrumental in certain projects that maybe nobody else would be as best suited as you are, because you understand the needs. I'll give you an example. So in outreach, in eye care outreach, sometimes there are situations that are ethical controversies, right? Should we really be offering procedures in the middle of the jungle in Mexico if it's not going to be the same high standard that we hold for ourselves at a, fully equipped facility in the United States or whatever? And so you have to be there to provide perspective and say, hey, I want to advocate for these people. I think in this situation, I'm probably going to be the only advocate that these people have. Let me give you a perspective that the work that you're doing is valuable and it's more than up to the standards locally. And not only that, but let me make sure that I help you educate the people that are benefiting from it so that they can also be partners in their own care. And they can be giving their dignity, right, by also being part of the decisions that are being made about their health. And so what you might have perceived as a weakness, as a disadvantage, as something that you weren't sure you could do, now makes you maybe the one person that can bridge people on both sides to make some really meaningful projects come to fruition.
Such a pleasure to have you, Jeannette. I'll be in touch soon. We have much more to discuss as you continue serving and certainly helping carry out the Lewis Center's mission of promoting better relations and understanding among the people and nations of the Americas.
Thank you, Dr. Hoyle, and please keep doing what you're doing, because bringing us together is going to do some wonderful things for our students and for people across borders.
Thank you.